Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Let's talk about, today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Today we're going to talk about Journeys into the Radiant Citadel, which is the brand new announced Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition classic hardback, right? The primary content vehicle of all Dungeons & Dragons. It's been in every single edition, 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, 5E. It is the big dog, right? It is like the main show, baby. This is where literally 10,000 tabletop role-playing game designers would, abandon their entire project just to get one sentence and their byline in this book. This is the big top, right? This is where it all happens, right? So we got another one coming, right? And I want to talk today about Journeys to the Radiant Citadel as a book that needs to be saved and how Dungeons & Dragons will save it, okay? So let's talk this through. Okay, so Dungeons & Dragons is the most complex, I honestly believe that Dungeons & Dragons may be the most complex product in the world, okay? Because there's a whole host of people who are like, it's a game. Hi, we see you. Love your incredibly shallow view of one of the most complicated things ever built in America. But it's a cultural icon. It's Americana. It functions for some people as a game. I think it's a self-improvement engine, right? Like that was secretly created by Gary Gygax. That's my humble opinion, right? It's a lot of stuff, right? But without a doubt, right, one thing that cannot be debated is Wizards of the Coast is accomplishing multiple goals with every Dungeons & Dragons product. What's the most base? They're making money, right? Like, let's not pretend, right? Like, it's a product that gets sold for money, right? That's not where it ends. I'm begging you, everybody out there, we live in an incredibly complicated world, right? And just pay attention, right? So Journeys into Radiant Citadel has a noble cultural goal attached to it by Wizards of the Coast, right? And so this isn't a book like most of the other ones. Not only is it supposed to make money, but it's literally supposed to bring more harmony into our culture by specifically allowing opportunities for authors that traditionally don't get that traditionally have not been included in the Dungeons and Dragons milieu to be included. Okay, all right. So that's a noble goal, right? And there's a ton of players who are like, I don't care about noble goals. I want a super dope adventure to run, right? Like, so where am I at with that? I do want a super dope adventure to run, but I also love the fact that Wizards of the Coast is achieving American cultural goals with its product. I want that, right? That's a feature, not a bug for me. For some people, like, oh, that's a defect. It's a bug. If you're trying to change my culture, I could be changed. I might have to change my language. I might have to change my emotions. I might have to think differently. Ooh, it's so frightening. Like it's a thing. It's a huge thing. You will find corners all over the internet. People just like, here's a good example. Nerderotic, right? That guy has he has to have 100 hours of content for a show that a 30-second trailer exists for, right? Because he's like, oh my gosh, this thing that's important to me, it could change how I feel and think, and it could change my language. I'm so frightened, right? Like, it's like you'll find the Quartering, another one, just outrageous coward, just like squawking about everything he's afraid of on the internet, right? Like it's a thing. When you try for cultural goals, it frightens people. It terrifies people, right? And you could hear it in their content, right? So here's the issue, right? All right. Now, I want this book, and I want it to achieve its cultural goals. I'm still worried about it. Why? Why am I? Here's why, okay? Here's the issue, right? You want to make money and you want to save the world. I get it, right? Here's the issue. There's a hard limit on what you can do in the product. What is the limit? It's 20%, right? I understand your goal is noble, but this thing has got to be 80% rocking adventure, and it's got to be 20% pet dolphins, all right? That's the issue, right? And where I get a little bent out of shape is when the message is it's way more easy to see in the product than the narrative, the story, the juice, the Dungeons and Dragons part of it, right? So basically, you got 20%, and I think often this gets flipped, right? And I think Candlekeep Mystery was a major failure here, right? And it's not just me saying that, it's people who worked on the book saying that, right? Saying that the message was wrong, right? And I'm saying you only got 80%. You only get 20% for your message, and 80. You get 20% for your message. 80% has to be narrative. Has to be narrative, okay? And that's the limit, right? And I think with Candlekeep Mysteries, that thing's like 10% story and 90% let's pet dolphins, right? And it doesn't like, and honestly, I think I've paged through it a bit. I've read a few chapters, right? And like, it just doesn't compel me from the beginning. And I've looked at every page. I've read through some of the sections, but it like, I can't put Called Another Deep Down. It is in my hands constantly because it just draws me, because it's 80% narrative. Like, they came here to make a D&D adventure. The Pet the Dolphins thing is limited, right? And I'm worried with Journeys into the Radiant Citadel, the Pet the Dolphin aspects of this book are just going to be too high. It's gonna be 90% message, 10% narrative, right? The ratio is gonna be wrong. So now you're like, oh yeah, so you think the same thing as me, Scott? It's gonna suck. No, I don't think that. Actually, I think that Wizards of the Coast is it's a very nuanced point, right? I think Wizards of the Coast is very aware of this, right? They're like, we're trying to be baller capitalists, and we're trying to save the world, right? Like, from its own horrible, terrible aspects, right? And so this gets really interesting, right? So they're aware of it. So what do, right? So you got this book, right? It's made by like 15 different authors. Problem right there, right? It's gonna be hard to take all this content, stitch it together by all these different authors and make a cohesive book. And I think that's one of the reasons why Candlekeep Mysteries is so low on the D&D 5e books. It's not great. It's just really not great, right? Because it's mixed. It's mixed in its message, and it's mixed in it's all over the place in the content that's in the book, right? So I think Dungeons & Dragons is very aware of this problem, right? So what can they do? Well, they figured this out in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, right? Their message there is like, let's not hit each other with sticks. That's what Wizards of the Coast is saying. They're like, hey, how would you like a Dungeons & Dragons book where you don't have to fight? And the whole world's like, who asked for this, right? Like, and they're like, vegan in Los Angeles, I think. And so they're like, okay, we're gonna go. And I was like, this book is gonna be absolutely terrible. I do not want a book about a fake carnival, right? Where you don't fight. I don't want this, right? But they fixed it. They saved the book. Wizards of the Coast saved the book, right? And I love Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and I have run it, and it is fantastic, right? Even with all these problems in it that make it, look, when you read about it, when you begin, you're like, it's going to be unplayable. It's going to sit on my shelf and never get played, right? And because, well, by the way, I buy every D&D book now. I buy it like day one, cash in hand at my FLGS, right? So there are no D&D books I don't buy now, right? I know some of you are still in that zone where you're not, where you don't buy every D&D book. If you haven't got the cheddar, feel released. If you do, you probably should be buying them all, I think. That's my take. There's a whole bunch of reasons. That's a different video. Let me get all the way there. Okay, so how do you save a book? We've already seen this once, right? We've seen this specifically in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. So it had this just pure suck setup, right? Fake carnival where you don't have to fight. Like, that's just like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. I do not want that, right? They put Ringle Run, Warduke, Strongheart, all the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon characters are statted in it. That's worth $50 to me, right? And that was enough to just get me in and start reading it, right? And Wizards of the Coast knows what they're doing now. They've been doing this for 48 years, right? Like, actually, they've been doing it since 1999. So they've been doing this for 23 years, and they inherited all the juice from D&D 1, 2, and 3, right? Actually, D&D in 1 and 2, right? They actually invented 3. So basically, this is it's powerful. It's powerful. And So I think so. All you need to do is like give me the cartoon characters, Bobby and Sheila and Hank and Eric, Uni. Book saved, right? Like, and I'll bet once I start reading it, it's not as terrible as it sounds when you put it. When you're like, "Hey, Journey to Citadels, a really lackluster version of Planescape." I'm like, do not want, right? But I think this book is going to rock, and the reason why is, as it's described, it sounds like it's going to suck, right? Here's a bunch of collected mishmash from 15 different authors. That sounds terrible. Also, I know you desperately want Planescape. This is a really bad version of Planescape. It will totally replace Planescape and really isn't what you want when you really want Planescape, but it can be saved. And I'm confident Wizards of the Coast is going to save it because they got 48 years of treasure they can pull out and put in the book, right? And save the fact that they're doing two things. They're balling out as capitalists and they're petting dolphins. That's what they're doing. That's where we're at, right? It's a complex world, right? All that's my opinion. What do you think? How do you think they'll save this book, right? I'm convinced they will save this book. I think they have to save this book. The initial structure is horrible, right? This is a book that should be Planescape that nobody wanted, right? Like, why don't we have Planescape? This is just a lackluster Planescape. Why are we not getting Planescape? But I'm very confident because they've proven it before that they can start with an absolute trash setup and deliver, right? And I'm confident that Journey into Radiant, the Radiant Citadel is going to deliver my $50, and I'm putting $50 down. I want $50 worth of value, and I think we're going to get it. That's my take. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.